Last dance. The old lady next door is having a birthday and she thinks I should come to the party at the community center. That's what they call the gymnasium at Coma Park now. Still smells like a gym to me. That old lady is turning 75, and I guess she thinks I should forgive and forget because now she's old and venerable. That was the word her friend the priest Amadeo used to describe her when he invited all the parishioners to her birthday party, a venerable member of our congregation. Socorro said she puffed up like a bird on a cold morning when the priest said that. What I say is that Anita Espinosa has been a cabrona for a lot longer than she has been old, and I would know she's been my neighbor for over 50 years. She's almost 3 years younger than I am, but she's always been older. When she and her husband Lorenzo moved next door, she and my wife Josie got to be friends, and I liked Lorenzo. I knew him better than his wife did, and I still liked him. Lorenzo was a paving contractor, and to get the city jobs, he also had to pave the way with the politicians. He knew a lot of bartenders and whores, but he usually made it to Mass on Sunday, and that was enough for Anita. She was religious, and Lorenzo pretended to be, so she thought they were happy until he died. My wife Josefina died long before Lorenzo did, a couple of years after Josie died. I remembered I was a man and brought some girlfriends home, and that was when Anita started causing me trouble. The old ladies at Cristo Rey started giving me the mal ojo, the stink eye, and even at Las Quince Letras, I heard about the chisme she was spreading about me. Then that Filipino priest, Amadeo, came up to me after Mass right in front of everybody like I had asked for his help. He hadn't seen me at church lately, he said. I told him maybe he hadn't been looking hard enough. And then he asked me if I was experiencing doubts about my faith. I said, doubts? He said, yes, doubts about faith and life. And was I in need of counsel? I said, no, not at all. I said that every day I thanked the God who had provided me with the fruit of the vine and the joys of women, which made him blush. So I knew for sure where that question had come from. I talked to Lorenzo about it, and he said he would talk to Anita, but he never did, or she didn't listen, so our friendship dried up. The bad news she spread about me kept reaching my ears, so I stopped going to church and planted a eugenia hedge between our houses and let it grow up. When Lorenzo died and they read the will, it turned out that he left some money to educate a couple of kids that Anita didn't know about. She made some novenas and ignored her own greedy children who wanted to contest the will, and then she joined the church full-time. It was sad. She was only in her 50s and still a good-looking woman, but she put on the black rebozo and mantilla, and she started to shrink. You could see the hump growing on her back and her shoulders reaching up for her ears. I still said hello to her when I saw her at Lupe's store or on the street, and I was always polite and friendly right up until the time she was going off to Mass about 6 in the morning, and she saw my friend Socorro leaving my house on her way to work. Socorro is a good woman and a hard-working woman. She tends bar at Las Quince Letras and works the morning shift at IHOP because she's a widow and she has 3 kids, and sometimes out of kindness, she also tends to me. And that was her mistake, according to Anita. Socorro nodded and said, "Buenos dias," and Anita hissed and said, "Sin vergüenza." That was like calling her a whore. I stopped being polite after that. I wouldn't talk to her, and I fertilized and watered the hell out of that eugenia hedge. The comforts of the church for old women like Anita will carry them a long way as long as they are healthy. But sometimes the promise of heaven isn't enough to overcome the pain of this earth. Anita started to feel a lot of pain in her bones and in her joints. I could see that pain when she hobbled down the sidewalk. I know that walk. I walk the same way. When the pain of the arthritis got too bad and the church's comfort wasn't enough, she remembered what her mother and grandmother had done and started brewing yerba buena and marijuana tea. I knew that. because I saw the marijuana growing up in the middle of her corn. When she started brewing that tea, Anita almost became a real person again. She would smile once in a while and tap her feet to music and not go to Mass every day. And she started to cook again. That was the one thing she did better than anyone in Shaky Town, even better than Josefina, who was a great cook. She had a touch with tamales that couldn't be explained. She did two kinds, pork in a red sauce with citron and chicken with green chile and Oaxacan cheese and herbs, and both of them would float off the plate and into your mouth. They were so light and flavorful. She started cooking them for the church, and they would sell out so fast that the priest, Amadeo, raised the price on them from $2 to an unheard of $3. They still sold out, and fist fights started in the waiting lines. And then Jacob Silverman, the food guy for the LA Times, wrote about them. Anita got respected for those tamales. And what I said to anyone who would listen was, good for her. Shaky Town didn't need any extra prayers from old ladies. The ones we already got haven't done much, but those tamales made a difference. Anita made them for the church still, but she did some catering too to save money for her big birthday. I wasn't going to church anymore, but my niece Dulce would buy tamales for me after Mass. Anita knew somehow. Maybe she looked through my trash out at the curb and saw her knot on the corn husks, or smelled them on my breath when I walked by her house, or someone from Kelso's Roundhouse or Las Quince Letras repeated what I said about those tamales. But she knew, and she started to tell Dulce that Don Emiliano didn't have to buy his tamales at the church. If he wanted some, just to leave a note in her mailbox, and she would leave them on the porch on Sunday. Because even if I hadn't talked to her, except to say buenos dias or buenas tardes in quite a while, I had been a good neighbor and a good friend to her Lorenzo. Dulce is like me. She doesn't discuss family business. Dulce told Anita that she hadn't seen me for a long time, but she would tell me at Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever the next holiday was, and that was where they left it, until Anita's birthday got closer and she wanted to know if I was coming to the party. She worried about it. She nagged at Dulce until Dulce refused to get me more tamales. People stopped me on the street to ask if I was going to the party, and why wasn't I going to the party? And all I ever said was maybe, and I don't know. And finally I said, well, I haven't been officially invited. And if she wants me there, why doesn't she ask me herself, since I live next door? Then it got back to me that she was afraid, because if she asked me and I turned her down, she thought no one else would come. Old ladies from the church would come, but not anyone looking for fun. Finally, Victoria Villaseñor, the only one of her friends she knew I would listen to, came by to talk to me about it. I never knew why they stayed friends. Vicky was a pistol. To this day, I don't think Anita understood that Vicky liked ladies. She probably thought that the reason that Vicky ended that arranged marriage at knife point was to protect her virtue. Vicky may have been a virgin, but she wasn't virtuous. Once she held that kitchen knife up to the tender neck of that Valdivar heir, her family's land swap was off, and Vicky, 15 years old, already knowing what she wanted, fled north to live the life she wanted to live. The Espinosa family took her in, and she and Anita were best friends through high school and beyond, until Anita married Lorenzo. Anita thought Vicky was jealous, but it wasn't that. Vicky knew exactly who Lorenzo was and worried for her friend. So, Vicky comes by, and she even brings a bottle. It's Cazadores, which is pretty good stuff. A handsome-looking deer on the label. She pounds on my door and yells, "Emiliano, you gonna leave me out here on this porch all night?" I wake up, look at the clock. It's not even 5 in the afternoon. I push down the footrest of my Barca lounger, and the seat pops up underneath me, and I'm propelled to my feet. That's why they're worth the extra money. They lift you like an angel. Meanwhile, Vicky keeps pounding on the door and yelling, "You going to embarrass me in front of the neighbors?" I open the door and hold up a hand. Embarrass you? Impossible. I haven't seen Vicky in years. She lives in Alhambra, still runs her bar there, and doesn't have any reason to visit. She looks the same, just a little more dried out, like me, stringy, like carne seca, jerky. Not at all like her friend Anita, who got soft and powdery. Vicky's hair is silver, too, just a little shorter than mine and swept back the same way. She holds up the cazadores and says, I need a favor. She knows my weaknesses, that Vicky. A favor for a friend who brings a drink with her who can refuse. Vicky gives me an abrazo, strong as always, because she knows she doesn't have to worry about me misunderstanding, and she grabs my cheek and pinches it. She tells me, you look better than you should, Emiliano. Your sins don't show too much. I wave her to the table in the kitchen and put out the copitas and salt and cut up some limes. She pulls the plug on the cazadores with her teeth and pours us each a shot and says, I hope you appreciate me bringing you the best tequila made in Jalisco. It is añejo, which is rare. And it is reservado, even rarer. But I'm partial to hornitos. I sip, raise an eyebrow, and she flicks her fingers at me. It doesn't matter what you think, Pavoso. It's already been decided. Cazadores is the best tequila you can buy. Mel Gibson made that movie in Mexico, the one about the Maya. When he was there in the Yucatan, every tequila maker in Mexico sent him a case of their best. When Mel Gibson got arrested in Malibu, guess what he had in the center console? Cazadores, I say. Cazadores! She pours us another shot. So here is what I need, she says. I need you to go to Anita Espinosa's 75th birthday party. I don't care what she's done. Do this for me. She got fucked up by the church for a while, but she's better now, and she's scared to death that no one except the old ladies from the church will show up. Is she gonna cook? Ay, cabrón, Vicky says. My first wife, Consuelo, used to say that the way to a man's heart was under his stomach. But I guess that's just young men. Yes, Anita's going to cook, and she's also going to bring in 3 mariachi bands and a full bar. She won't need me, I said. She'll get a crowd. She wants the old crowd, Vicky said, from the neighborhood, all the ones who knew her when she was young. She knows they won't come unless you talk to them and let them know you'll be there. It's your duty as mayor. The old crowd. That means the other 3 of us left. And who told you about the mayor business? That was when I was drinking more. You've been away a long time. You shouldn't come in and insult me right away. Which is to say, Vicky poured me another shot and listened to my complaints, and I agreed to go to the party. The night of the birthday party, I have to say, that gym was impressive. Anita did it up right. She had her granddaughters at the door who gave you a nice program that made you feel it was formal. And around the entrance, it was packed with flowers and cards pinned up on the big cork boards. There was a big display of the photos of her life. Lorenzo was an impressive man that night. He'd been dead more than 20 years, but you would have thought he'd just been made saint. There were photos, I swear, of every sidewalk and curb and street he ever built, and groundbreaking ceremonies with smiling politicians. 40 photos of Lorenzo with the golden shovel or cutting through the ribbons, and newspaper clippings, Espinosa this and Espinosa that, and a lot of those photos were cut. But I was probably the only one there who remembered the originals and knew which girlfriends got trimmed. Anita was in a few of those photos, but most of the pictures of her were in front of Cristo Rey Church with her famous tamales, or from the long article Jacob Silverman did about how she made them and why they were so good. The photo I liked the best was one where she was looking at Jacob Silverman sincerely just after she lied about not using lard in her tamales. Jacob Silverman looked like he was ready to cry. I've been there on trash day. I know what was out at the curb. Farmer John sells a lot of stuff in gallon containers, but I never saw no label that said extra virgin olive oil. Inside was the start of one of the best parties ever. Anita promised a full bar. Vicky was running it, and it was full. They had kegs of Corona and tubs of ice in the corners of the gym to keep the kids and cholos away from the neighbors. Vicky had a backlit display of 50 tequilas and anything else you could want. It was like a shrine. But that's not where you look when you walk through the door. You have to look at Anita and her family. It's like going to church. Against the south wall, across from Vicky's bar, it's like an altar. There are 2 steps and a platform, all covered with carpet. And on the top of the platform is Anita, in a big chair, surrounded by her family. As people come through the door, her nieces and nephews are like a funnel, guiding them toward the altar. One of the nieces tried to guide me, but I went to the side to really take a look at things. You can tell that people are a little surprised. Here in Shaky Town, we aren't used to this much organization, but people follow the nieces and nephews. They go to the steps and go up. Some of them look up at the big light shining down on the altar and look confused, but they are taken to Anita in her chair, and she greets them graciously. Some people have brought presents or flowers or candy. Some poor fools even brought food. Anita's family directs them to the correct table where things pile up, and all I can think is, Anita, who told you to do this? I head for the bar, and there awaiting me, holding up a shining shot of Cazadores, if I can believe the bottle next to her, is Vicky. She hands it over. I look at her and I indicate the altar and Anita's family. Don't look at me, Vicky says. One of her nieces is a wedding planner. Are you being paid for this occasion? Me? Personally? Vicky says. No. We gave her a discount on the liquor also. I hand back the Cazadores. Give me a shot of Hornitos. She winks. I look up at the altar where the people are still being led up. Doña Anita, we can all live with, I say, but we don't go so much for coronations. I toss the hornitos and then follow my nose and all the people coming down from the altar to the food. The woman can cook. That food is worth everything we have had to put up with in this lifetime and the next. Besides the famous tamales that I've already talked about, there is an excellent green chile corn soup and pechugas con rajas, chicken breast with green chile and crema, enchiladas, of course, both red and green, perfect rice, perfect beans. And at the end of the line, some old friends, Sonia Limon, who has to be 85 years old if she is a day, and Mercedes Carriedo, her friend, who is even older, patting out their famous tortillas. Sonia on corn and Mercedes on the more delicate flour. Heavenly morsels. I hug them both. I take my dinner outside and sit at a picnic table with a family I don't know, a man and his wife and 3 kids. We all agree about the tamales being the best, and then the man introduces himself and I recognize him, Luis Romero Jr. His father was a good friend of mine. We even played music together back when I could still play. His wife, Linda, tells me that they were very glad to hear that I had decided to be kind and come to the party. Luis Sr. hadn't liked Anita at all because of something she'd said about Teresa, his wife, who was still alive and refused to come. Luis Jr. says, we decided if you could forgive and forget, so would we. So here we are. By the time I get back to the bar, I'm seeing more and more faces I don't know. Some I haven't seen in years, and some like Luis Contreras and Larry Madrid and Del Zamora that I've never seen any place but Kelso's Roundhouse and Las Quince Letras. I asked Vicky for a tray and a couple of copitas of hornitos and some bottles of Carta Blanca, which is hard to find now. Vicky stocked it special for the viejos. I bring them to Sonia and Mercedes, who are still patting out tortillas in rhythm because people are still lining up for food, some of them their second plates. Thirsty work, girls, I say, as I set the tray down. Mercedes nods, never missing a beat. She's like one of those lawn birds that clacks in the wind. But Sonia stops, takes a sip of beer. Thanks for remembering that I like Carta Blanca, Sonia says. A lot of memories coming back tonight, I say. There's a tap on my shoulder, and when I turn around, I see Anita and Lorenzo's oldest boy, Edward. Lorenzo gave all his kids what he called real American names. Around City Hall, he was always Larry. And I guess He thought it would help if they spent as much time with Anglos as he did. Eddie, I say, nice to see you. Edward was always a very nice boy, but not well equipped for this world, and it didn't help that Anita pushed him into the seminary when he was only in 9th grade. When he finally got up the courage to quit in 11th grade, he never caught up. His friends from grade school had made new friends, and he was shy around girls. I always had a soft spot for him because he and my son were close before my son died. He was gentle, like my boy, and I know he wanted to be an artist like me. Tonight, I can tell he is embarrassed. He holds out his hand and shakes mine, but he can hardly look at me. Don Emiliano, he says, my mother would like to thank you for coming to her party. Could I ask you? And here he gestures towards the stage. I look up. Anita still has a pretty good crowd around her and more waiting with presents and flowers. Don't worry, Eddie, I say. I'll be up there. I'm just waiting for the crowd to thin out so I can have some real time with Anita. He shakes my hand again and goes up to the stage to convey the message. His sisters close in on him. Back at the bar, Vicky has to yell at some borrachos pushing in for drinks to clear space. Eddie Goodwin and Marco Martinez have been saving my seat and the bottle of Hornitos that is waiting there. People are having a good time, some of them with full bellies for the first time in a while. Vicky and her helpers are pouring as fast as they can, and it's getting loud and warm. The 3 mariachi bands are drinking too, always a good sign. That usually means a long night of good music. One of the drunks starts yelling for the bands to start. Give us some music, my ears are cold. Vicky is on him like a hornet on a piece of melon. Cállate, she tells him. We have to hear the speeches first. I finally look at my program and see that Father Amadeo is the master of ceremonies, and only after he gives his speech about Anita's life and good works, and then gives the formal thank you for her large donation to Cristo Rey, and hands over the scroll the bishop has signed, will we ever get to hear any music. According to the program, though, that was to take place at 7:30. I asked Marco Martinez, the only man among us with a watch, for the time. It's 8:17. Marco is a retired gambler, you might say bookmaker. And he is retired instead of in jail or dead because he was always careful and precise. That means I've been here more than 2 hours already. The time has gone by so fast. When I tell that to Eddie Goodwin, he says it's because I'm drinking too slow. Nobody around the bar seems to mind the bad news that we won't have any music. The good news, that we get to drink for free while we're waiting, is enough. Vicky has already had to call her distributor and go back to the bar in Alhambra for more liquor. I can see that things are thinning out a little on Anita's stage, as even the slowpokes have said hello and finished their dinners and started for the bar. I see Mercedes finally starting on her beer and shaking the cramps out of her eyes. Sonia has a stack of tortillas in front of her and is starting on her 3rd carta blanca. People are starting to pile up around me at the bar, more old friends, faces I haven't seen in years, and suddenly there is a line in front of me, people waiting to shake my hand and say hello. Tony Mathews is there, the first time I've seen him without sawdust in his hair from his cabinet shot. And Sue Kramer, who taught every kid in Shaky Town how to read. Petrolino Suarez, who owns Tio's Tacos, and is probably here because he is still trying to figure out Anita's tamales, jumps in front of a lot of people, like you would expect from a Chilango, and shakes my hand. Emiliano, he says, come and see me. We're doing licuados de salud now, just like in Mexico. One with nopales and espinaca, a special for viejos. Come see me. One of the Peña girls has fallen over. I can't see whether it's Dora or Gloria. I say girls, but I can say that because they are only in their late 50s. Now I see that it's Dora on the floor and Gloria trying to pick her up, but they are both laughing so hard at something that Dora's husband Jason said that they can't manage it. The crowd spreads out around them, and I'm looking past them at Anita's stage. All the people are out here now. On stage there is only the family, Anita and her daughters and the granddaughters and young nieces and nephews, and poor Edward, the only man among them. All of Anita's brothers are dead, and all the daughters are acrimoniously divorced, so there are no son-in-laws to help out. The niece, who I guess would be the wedding planner, already has a microphone and wants to talk, but they are holding her back. Poor Edward is listening to his sisters and nodding, and then looking away. Anita is sitting in her chair and looking up at the lights. Finally, Edward starts my way, his head down. I stand up and clear the way for him. He has to shout into my ear, "We're waiting for Father Amadeo, but he hasn't come and we don't know where he is. What should I do?" I can imagine the other end of this conversation with his sisters telling him to go talk to the old borracho who was eating up all our food and drinking up all our liquor. "What should I do?" Edward asks again. I don't even have to think about it. "Eddie," I shout back, "start the music. Let the mariachis play until Amadeo gets here." Eddie looks at me, helpless. He was supposed to give a speech. "Start the music." Edward shuffles back to the stage and he tries to get the crowd's attention. He holds up his hand and yells, "Ladies and gentlemen, I think I'm the only one in the place." I think I'm the only one in the place who hears him. I turn around to Vicky and draw a hand across my throat. She stops serving and spreads the word to her bartenders, and then I wave to Linda Sandoval, who is sitting next to her husband Miguel, who is trying to feed some tamale to their nervous Chihuahua Fabienne, who is trembling on his lap. Linda has a famous whistle so loud she can stop traffic. "La Linda!" I shout and put my finger and thumb to my mouth like she does. Linda stands up and stops traffic. It gets really quiet. I point to the stage. "Edward Esmidosa has an announcement to make." Edward steps up, pale and shaking. "Father Amadeo is lost, I guess." That provokes laughs and catcalls. "So until he gets here, we'll have some music." He sits down. That niece, the wedding planner, is still clutching her microphone and crying. I point to the three bands sitting around drinking and yell, "Hombres, do your job. Make us forget who we are." Takes a minute or two, but they assemble. I'm pretty sure they've rehearsed or at least talked about it. Each group takes a corner of the room, and when they are agreed and ready, the horn players step up. I know what they're going to do before they do it. Every Mexican does. If there's a star-spangled banner for mariachis, it is this song, La Negra. The first trumpet notes purl and halt and build to a measured canter and then break free at a full gallop. It's the Mexican cavalry coming to the rescue for the old and the sad and the sober. If you can hear this song and not move, you have no hips, you have no feet. I can feel myself remembering, with hips that creak and feet that hurt, and I stand up, young and happy and high again. Three bands blending in that high, sweet voice, formed in Jalisco, singing about the dark-haired woman. Negrita de mis pesares, ojos de papel volando, negrita de mis pesares, ojos de papel volando, a todos diles que sí. Pero no les digas cuando así me dijiste a mí, por eso vivo penando. Ay. 40 years ago, when Josie and I could afford our first vacation, we went to Ensenada. We sat in Husong's cantina, and I paid the mariachis 12 strong with 4 horns to play La Negra 3 times in a row. They surrounded our table, 2 guitars, vihuela, guitarrón nearest, 3 violins and harp next, 4 trumpet players backed away, and it was the best stereo in the world. I would have bought more if Josie hadn't confiscated my wallet. Tonight with 3 groups, it's almost as good. The room vibrates and people stand and raise their arms and clench their fists and the cries come up. You can see the mariachis remembering who they are. They go through all 3 verses. No one wants it to end, this old song from Nayarit about the dark-haired woman who won't love us. They do the last verse a second time and finally end with a flourish of trumpets. More gritos come up from the crowd. The horn players have started to sweat, and the gym is now filled with friends and strangers, suddenly alive to one another with new eyes and open noses. The mariachis take turns now, one group trying to top the others, and people start to dance, and those at the bar who can't dance or won't dance are still moved. We won't find out until tomorrow what happened to Father Amadeo, who never shows up. Tomorrow, we will learn that Amalia Archuleta, Anita's oldest enemy, both in Shaky Town and at Cristo Rey, where they both attended the altar for 40 years, fighting for crumbs of compliments from priests, has chosen this night to die. Because of her long service to the church and her insistence, Father Amadeo, and only Father Amadeo, is to administer the last rites. Once he is there at her house, because she won't let go of his hand, and because her large sons and grandsons are attending and insist on respect and comfort for Amalia, we won't know what happened to him until Monday, when we also learn about her miraculous recovery, which Amalia credits to Father Amadeo and his religious powers. Most of us don't mind Father Amadeo's absence. The music is good, the beer and tequila flow, there are still enough leftovers and salsas and beans and tortillas to put together burritos and tacos if anyone gets hungry. It's only up on the stage that things are getting tense, where poor Edward is besieged by his sisters who are driven by their mother's pale, unhappy face. Poor Edward is pushed from that raft of the stage. He has to swim his way through the sea of the crowd, swaying now to La Pistola y El Corazón. I watch him struggle to reach me, brought forward on one wave, sucked back by the next. He finally washes in, retrieved by the Peña sisters. They plunk him down on the bar stool next to me. They want me to make a speech, Eddie says. And he puts his head down on the bar, clasps his hands to his head. It's at this moment that Vicky Villaseñor arrives and takes away my half-finished shot of hornitos and my carta blanca, and she wipes the bar in front of me with her cloth, looking at me the whole time. She wrings out her bar rag. "Are you cutting me off?" I ask her. "No," she says. "I would never do that." She rolls her rag and tosses it over her shoulder. "I just wanted to get your attention." She leans close. "I know this is fun for you, but I would like you to think." She looks sideways to Eddie and switches to Spanish, which she knows he won't understand. "Anita puede ser una cabrona, pero ella es tu vecina. No seas cruel, no seas imprudente." She's reminding me that Anita is my neighbor and that I have obligations. Vicky puts back my shot glass, refills it, and drops down a fresh carta blanca. "Also," she said, "Anita paid for this music and cooked this food that brought you back to life." And then she quotes to me my favorite dicho, one she's heard from me for years. "El diablo no es sabio porque es el diablo. El diablo es sabio porque es viejo." The devil isn't wise because he is the devil. The devil is wise because he's old. The devil would know better. I do the stupid thing. I say, "Come on, Eddie," and I lead him up to the stage. On the way, I wake up Linda Sandoval and ask her to whistle, and she does, unfortunately, cutting through and stopping a fine rendition of Volver. A lot of dancers who were about to reconsecrate some marriage vows there in the dark split apart. I hated to do it. I loved that song. I loved to dance to it. I always loved falling in love for 3 minutes. By the time Eddie and I get to the stage, things are quiet. I find the wedding planner niece and borrow her microphone. The microphone is a miracle. No wires. I click it on and everyone can hear me. "Ladies and gentlemen," that's the test, and the test works. You can see them turning to listen. "Señoras y señores, borrachos y borrachas." A laugh and real attention, and I have no idea what to say next. While I am collecting my thoughts, I go to collect Anita, who looks very old at that moment. She looks up at me like she doesn't know what I will do. I bow to her and take her hand and lift her up from her chair and bring her to the front of the stage. We are here tonight because of this woman, Anita Espinosa. Everything I have said so far is true, so I go on easily. I don't know what Father Amadeo is going to say, and I don't have any speech prepared. Anita is squeezing my hand, and she looks up at me like I'm a doctor or a priest. So all I can tell you is what I know. I let go of her hand. I have to detach myself from Anita so I can gather strength to tell my lies. Anita Espinosa has blessed our community for more than 50 years as a good wife, and a good mother, a good neighbor, and a good friend to the church and the poor. People are starting to clap. And she is a great cook, finally. Back to the truth. The cheers go up. Anita is beaming. Her family behind her is clapping and happy. One more lie. On behalf of Shaky Town, Doña Anita, we thank you for being born. Viva Anita! The cheer is repeated 3 times until Anita is glowing. One more lie. To end our ceremonies, I would also like to honor Doña Anita's husband and my good friend, Lorenzo Espinosa. I will ask the bands to play his favorite song, Cuatro Caminos, and ask you all to dance. Absolutely the last lie. I look at the mariachis and say, hombres, cuatro caminos, suavecito. They gather themselves in their corners, and at my mark, they begin that sad song, the one that always made Lorenzo cry, poor guilty man. I bow to Anita, take her hand again, and lead her to the middle of the dance floor and get her started on that waltz. 2 turns in, she's collapsed in my arms, leaning in with her full weight against me and sobbing. She's heavier than I thought she would be. I turn her and turn her once more so that she is back on her feet, and then guide her to the dark corner of the gym so that her family won't see her crying and blame me.